Welcome back to the Hoops Lounge with a show with more jazz in Salt Lake City. My name is Marc Griffin, aka Montreal Marc. I'm joined by my partner in crime, Phil Boileau, Sporting Phil. Today we're talking the Utah Jazz, who surprisingly very much off the radar, have the best record in the league since the All-Star break, and since really trading Enis Kanter to OKC. Phil, what's going on in Salt Lake City?
Well, it's kind of an addition by subtraction. They traded away at the trade deadline a former third overall pick, Enis Kanter. We forget that pick comes from the what was New Jersey Nets, now Brooklyn Nets trade that brought Deron Williams over to now Brooklyn and brought Derrick Favors and a couple first-round picks. This team has changed its identity. This team is young, hungry, and that front court of Rudy Gobert and Derrick Favors is allowed for one of the top defenses in the league. I mean, when you look at a guy who's 7'1" in Gobert, can block shots, rebound, athletic, kind of a young Tyson Chandler type player, maybe blocks a few more shots than Chandler did in his time. And when you look at Derrick Favors hitting his outside jumpers, rebounding, defense, and then at the wing positions, they're deep, they're young, they're hungry. We have Alex Burks, Trey Burks, Dante Exum, who was fourth overall pick in last year's draft, and newly minted franchise player Gordon Hayward. This team is one of those, if you look at them, there's no superstar. Right, Gordon Hayward's arguably the best player, but no one would consider him one of the best players in the league, but he's an exceptionally good overall player. I think this is one of those teams that is built for the future and has just so happened to be very good right now. I mean, this trade obviously was very good for OKC, especially losing Serge Ibaka, and Kanter's doing well there. But Utah, they're one of the shining lights of the NBA, and I expect them to be a very strong powerhouse for years to come.
Here's one really interesting stat I saw last night. In terms of youth, going to March Madness, which is about to kick off in a couple of days now. BYU, Brigham Young, college team in Utah. The average age of their starting lineup is like 23.5. Utah Jazz is like 22.5, which is just mind blowing that a pro team has even younger. I know you're saying they don't have a superstar, but they absolutely have one in the making in the Stifle Tower / French rejection and Rudy Gobert. We were talking with Dwight Walton on two of the things that really blow me away is both his length and his shot blocking ability, but also, as a rim defender there. But then the other component defensively is he is a rebounding machine. This past week, I think he's had 3 games with 15 or 20, 25 boards. I mean, if he can learn how to get a little jump hook, I mean, this guy, he's speaking perennial all-star to me.
I mean, really, I agree with you. I think that's the ideal, but I don't think he even has to get that far. When you look at the rest of the team and having Favor, because to your point, they can't have a front court of Derrick Favors and Rudy Gobert who are inept on the offensive end. But I think we're seeing Favors' offensive game really develop, and I think Gobert, as long as he can put his putbacks, hit his free throws, the basic needs of a defensive front court, defensive center. I mean, we're kind of spoilt right now because his numbers on any given night are almost being matched by one Hassan Whiteside, and the MIP conversation has to begin, maybe not with these names, but these guys have really come on strong. And when you look at everything he brings, and by the way, I really want to give you credit for the French rejection.
I didn't come up with that. No.
Oh, you didn't come up with that? Okay. But I actually like that one. And I think their coach deserves a lot of credit when you're talking about a bunch of young players, especially playing in the daunted West. Mm-hmm. Being able to consistently perform. And, there's a lot of things on top of that. Being able to, not have locker room issues when you've traded one of your top assets or perceived assets in Enis Kanter, in bringing Trey Burke off the bench, allowing Exum to start. This could have been very negative on Burke, but Burke, Michigan Wolverine man, is a very professional young player, and I think he's hungry. This team is one of those guys, those teams that I think they have so much talent. It's going to be interesting who they decide to pay money for. They've already locked up Favors, but their ability to rotate in that backcourt and their youth is going to allow them to at this point, you know, playoffs are a little bit out of reach. They start hitting their stride a little bit late in the season, but they're going to play spoiler. And I think, you know, if it was any other team, knowing my track record and how I think teams should play, I would go more the tanking route. But when you're this young, to your point of the average age, why bother tanking? You have the young assets. You need to develop them, and what better way to develop them than meaningful games against some of the top teams in the league that need these wins? Because those are wins you can come away from, build on, and turn next season into a success. And with the West, I don't want to say wide open, but there's so much talent in the West. You could see through a couple trades, injuries or such, within the next couple years, Utah making their mark. And we forget in the playoffs, when you can defend every position as they can, and you can rebound and all these other intangibles, I think they're going to be one of those scary teams. I think if this team was in the East right now, you'd be looking at them as the team that no one wants to play.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You know, we should mention the name of Quin Snyder. He's doing a really job kind of corralling all these guys together, and they're not just beating weak teams. He said, "I'm glad we're in the West because they've been beating the teams like Memphis and San Antonio along the way in this stretch." And the two guards, I mean, that have been really flying lately. You mentioned Dante Exum, also Rodney Hood has had a couple of career games this week, couple 20, 25-point games. They're just young talent, this team is, and like you said, it's going to be an interesting couple of years moving forward. So, yeah, Utah Jazz, very interesting franchise. If you had to kind of summarize how their year's going, you know, in a few words, what would you say?
I would say steady growth. I would just say on top of obviously some of their young productive players getting better, I think as a franchise and chemistry this is growing. I just think this is exactly Sam Hinkie of the Philadelphia 76ers is trying to build this youth movement and go that way. And it's going to be tough because when you have all young players, everyone's like, you need veterans to calm the locker room. These guys have
Utah's got no one over 27.
Exactly. So they've been quietly able to, keep the calm. Everyone is a professional on that team. There are no egos. There is talent. There is length, height at every position. It's an immensely tall team. I mean, when you look at 7'1", 6'10", 6'8", 6'6", and you can bring in 6'6" at Dante Exum. This is one of the larger teams in the league, young, athletic, hungry. I just think this is the ideal model of how the NBA wants teams to build. They're not throwing money at players. They're not, playing these games and in the media all the time. This is a team that's very under the radar, kind of like San Antonio, and touching on the international talent with the French rejection.
And Exum.
Yeah. And Exum, of course. It'll be interesting if Exum or Trey Burke ends up as their starting point guard years down the road. Exum is going to have a little bit longer of a learning curve in terms of carving out his role. But I think this is the ideal NBA small-town franchise. And this is just good for the league. I just think this is a feel-good story. And if any person wanting to get into the NBA and find a team to be able to cheer for, not just now, but for years to come, I think you have to look long and hard at the Utah Jazz.
Yeah, I think the fans in that city and that state are happy for the first time since a guy named Mailman in Stockton played there. It's been a long time for this franchise, and I really do believe in Exum. I got to see him play last summer for Team Australia at the World Cup, and I think he's got miles of potential, and as does Gobert. So these guys, they got a young core, and they got really something special they're building there. So, Phil, I want to thank you for being on the show again. Always check us out on hoopslounge.com, facebook.com/hoopslounge. And, we've got, if you check out our next segment, we got some interesting news coming up in terms of maybe a new location where we'll be recording